That's what it's about. It's about taking all this data we collect and delivering a better experience. That's the power of technology.
All right, everyone. Another day, another episode of Business is Human. Andre, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. The weather in Austin, cannot complain. Sitting on my recliner chair right now. What about you?
Well, I just set my standing desk up. So I'm in the power pose, which I'm actually really excited about. And it's actually a good segue in today's episode because just thinking back to the days of my single platform days, which was a high volume inside sales company. The interesting thing about that is that we were coached to stand while we were on the phone. And frankly, I used to like to stand and try to be really loud so that people would think that I was working hard, and I was. But it was an interesting dynamic. And one of the companies that I hear about and been hearing about more and more in this kind of world of virtual selling, of technology-enabled sales organizations and go-to-market organizations is RingDNA. And today we're fortunate enough to have Howard Brown, the CEO and founder, on the show. Howard, how are you, man?
I'm fabulous. I'm psyched to be here, guys.
Psyched to have you here. And we did some homework on you, and one of the amazing things about having a podcast, being on the show, is you just meet people from all walks of life. And I have to say, your background as far as technology entrepreneurs and founders goes is quite different than most. It seems like you actually started your career in therapy, working with people, psychology, before being a tech founder. How the heck did you get here?
Yeah, it's not a traditional path. So yeah, I was a clinical psychologist, a therapist. I worked with really difficult populations, from substance abuse to domestic violence, families that had trouble with their teenagers. And I really enjoyed it. I really, really loved helping people. And, as a kid, I was a programmer. The internet was sort of going off in the mid-latter part of the 90s. And I really became aware of a need, both from the business side, which was therapists. They had no idea how to manage their books, no idea how to find customers. And people, 2/3 of the American public suffers from a behavioral health care disorder at some point in their life. And this is back in the 90s. And you don't go and ask your friend about a therapist back in the 90s. You barely do that now. And so the idea of creating a marketplace where I could connect therapists with people looking for help seemed like the perfect thing to do. And created an internet portal, ended up aggregating about 1 million pages of unique content, had thousands of therapists join and pay a subscription-based fee, got a bunch of hospitals to sign up, and we became the largest behavioral healthcare network on the internet that comprised of over 300 individual websites that serviced every kind of condition you could imagine. And it was my love and passion for helping people that ultimately got me out of helping people one-on-one to a bigger mission, which was, how do we help more people? And, from there, it just grew.
That's awesome. Woven into that is something that we talk a lot about on the show, which is, it really is all about the people. That is how you create change in the world. And I think one of the things a couple things that come to mind that I wanted to pick your brain on. So I think today, more and more people are trying to figure out, how can we use technology to make our people better? And what's starting to emerge is doing that in a more personal way that's unique to me. You have companies like the one that comes to mind that New York was so popular for so long was called Newton, and their whole concept of adaptive learning, where guess what? The way that Scott sits in the classroom and absorbs material and improves is different than how Andre sits in a classroom and absorbs material. So therefore, the modalities, the mechanisms, the content, it should be tailored. That is something that a lot of leaders are trying to figure out. And then you guys have really been at the forefront of helping companies actually execute and implement in the go-to-market function. And so, like, how do you think leaders should be thinking about leveraging technology in this way, given some of the options that are now available to people that never once were before?
As I said to you earlier, I love the name of your podcast, Business is Human, because it is about the people. Everything's about the people. And business isn't just human, it's personal. And each individual is part of a larger organization. And one thing that I've learned throughout my career is if you focus on helping people, whether you're customers or prospects, whether it's your sales team, your customer support reps, your leadership team, it's really about helping one another grow. And for us, the idea of technology isn't about replacing. There's a lot of worry about AI replacing human beings. It's not about replacing. It's about augmenting and enhancing their jobs. It's about making our lives better. So how do you take technology and make your team better? How do you use technology to provide a better user experience for your customers? That's what it's all about today. It's looking across the spectrum and saying, yes, there's tons of problems that we can solve with technology. At the end of the day, how do we create an environment where I, as a consumer, or me as a business, use technology to create a better experience for my employees, a better experience for my customers, so that they'll want to stay with us? And that to me is core to everything we do.
Personally, I feel like there's a lot of people that feel very uncomfortable with a lot of the data that their personal data that's kind of being ingested and used in various ways. But like, my perspective on this is changing. When just in our space, there's like my emails tracked, my calls are tracked, they're recorded, they're all these things. And once upon a time, I think that was really nerve-wracking. And now it feels like the tide is shifting, where a lot of people, myself included, recognize that is imperative for us to get better. It's like if you were an athlete, if you didn't have any tape of your game, maybe you would be exposed because your mistake you'd be able to replay it, but that would also help you improve and get better.
I believe that we need to be cautious and careful with personal data. Absolutely. But making sure that our intent in using data is to deliver a better experience. I remember early on in my career, one of the things we did was we set up, as I mentioned, websites to help people with specific issues. We had several eating disorder websites where people could go find information, realize that they weren't alone in the world, that other people suffered from these conditions, and then ultimately drive them to pick up the phone and call and ask for help. The problem was we weren't using the information, which was we knew what website they were coming from. We even knew which content they were reading. And then we made a mistake. We would route those calls to any available agent. Wrong. What we realized was we could take the information, the actual phone number, the website they were on, the page they were on, and route that call to an agent that could best help them. So let me give you an example of where we failed, but we grew quickly. We used to route it to any available agent. What we learned was that a woman suffering from an eating disorder, calling that phone number, if a man picked up the phone, there was a 95% abandonment rate. So we went through this whole process, figured out how to help them. They picked up the phone, they reached out for help, and then we totally missed them by routing them to a man. So guess what? We created a system where we aligned phone numbers, web properties, a routing engine that would intelligently route the call to the right agent with the skills and the right sex in this case, provide some contextual information for that rep, and help them provide a better experience to that customer or that person. That's what it's about. It's about taking all this data we collect and delivering a better experience. That's the power of technology.
Where do you think the opportunity is more tactically for most go-to-market organizations in that regard today that, perhaps they're not taking advantage of?
Well, I think it's a big challenge, right? So you've had guests on your show talking about revenue operations, and that's all about taking disparate pieces of data and processes and people and trying to align them. And there's so many different tools in the go-to-market stack, and unfortunately, they don't all work great together. You add tools on top of tools, you add more people to operate the tools. The idea really is about taking that data, normalizing it, providing insights so that those insights can create the next best action. They can help you prioritize your time. They can help you prioritize your learning or education. So for me, it's really about thinking about what's most important, how to collect that information, how to focus on your end customer and deliver the best experience to them. So if you're thinking about technology, think about how to utilize that technology, not just to do things quicker or more efficiently. Think about how to do it more effectively. And I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Howard. And honestly, your story earlier about the call center kind of brought me back to my SDR days where, after about like 5 months, I realized that my conversion rate with women was much lower than men. And I actually completely changed my tone of voice. I adopted this character called the librarian. And I just, I saw it, I lifted my conversion significantly as a result. But, going back to what you were saying earlier, right? Like, I love this idea that, data is only effective if it leads to an action, right? And I think that something that I hear a ton is there's nothing that sales reps hate more than being asked to put data in a system and never receiving value back for their work, their administrative. Like, what are you using this for, right? So how do you think through that as it relates to sales coaching and maybe as it relates to RingDNA?
So the whole premise of RingDNA is to collect as much information so that the rep doesn't need to put that information in the system. So from the marketing source that the call came in on, or the email or web form, to who the rep is contacting, whether they're using SMS, the phone, email, to the calls that are being recorded or the Zoom meetings that are being recorded. All of that is really about collecting the information, not just for information's sake, not for a dashboard or something for the back office. The whole idea of it is taking that data, turning it into actionable insights to deliver a better experience for the rep, to help them prioritize their time, their messaging, so that ultimately they can perform better. And so for me, it's collect as much data as possible, but use that data for insights, for action, so that you help your team. Otherwise, you're just creating Big Brother and nobody wants it. Everybody's going to feel judged. Everybody's going to worry about what they do. The idea is creating a culture where you can help coach your reps, where you can help facilitate a learning environment where we're all benefiting from this communal knowledge, these experiences, to ultimately deliver a better experience again for the customer.
I'm so happy you brought up the culture component, because I just think so many people don't recognize this. For example, I've never used RingDNA. It sounds awesome. I've seen it. It seems very powerful. But I think just fundamentally, people need to recognize that no piece of technology is going to just be a silver bullet to a problem. You need to have cultural buy-in, and the technology removes the friction to the execution of that particular initiative or process. And so
I love that.
You have to have both. You have to have both. And so I love that just mantra that you're talking about here, because I've just seen so many great pieces of technology that just, because there was never cultural buy-in to just the greater mission that it was trying to push forward, it never went anywhere. And frankly, that's not the software vendor's fault.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, The first institutional money that RingDNA ever took was from a firm called Bryant Stibel, and it was Kobe Bryant's firm. And
that's awesome.
And yeah, it's awesome. And it was horribly sad and tragic that we lost him last year. But he always emphasized coaching, training, trying to do your best, trying to be your best. And, for us, the idea of coaching is not an afterthought. It's the first thought. When we as a company think about who we're hiring, like what is the profile? It's people that both can be coached, people who enjoy coaching, people who have a thirst for learning and getting better. And that is so critical to the team we're building, but also the product that we're building. So the product is all about how do we help people execute better? How do we help them perform at their top? And the way to do that is by getting buy-in. One of the most beautiful things that I see on a daily basis is when reps have conversations. Sure, we use AI and surface the conversations that they need the most training or help, but we also have created a culture and a tool where they can click a button during a call and they can either ask for immediate help from a supervisor, or they can click the button and ask for coaching later on. And that's what's incredible is we've created the opportunity for people to not feel bad about making mistakes or failing, but the idea that it's not only okay, but it should be celebrated. We should celebrate those moments because if we celebrate them, we learn from them and then we improve. And that's what we have to do as a society. We have to learn how to be okay making mistakes and growing from them. And that's what artificial intelligence is. It's really about pattern recognition. You look at all the data, you look at the outliers, you look what's working, you look what's not, you train your machine to surface that, and you help people with that knowledge. We're helping people grow faster through the utilization of technology, and we're creating companies where coaching isn't the afterthought. Again, it is the thought, because you can create all the processes you want. You can collect all the data you want, but unless you use that to help people perform at their best, and their best for one person is very different than somebody else's best. So focusing on the whole person, on the entire sales process, on their entire engagement with their customers, that's how you create a winning culture. That's how you create a winning product. And that's how you get passionate about what you're doing. And that's why I love RingDNA and I love doing the job I'm doing on a daily basis.
That is awesome. There's so many little things that you just brought up that I just would want to talk more about. And, one of the things that we have recognized, because we service similar audiences to your point, is in many instances, it's actually the problem isn't that the data doesn't exist or you don't have the data. In fact, in my opinion, in a lot of instances, it's people aren't looking at it. It's not easy to get. We see this all the time from things like, and we're talking to a customer and one of the executives knows somebody there, but we have no idea. Or someone has an interest in using our product a certain way and somebody else on our team knows that, but the CSM that they're working with doesn't. And I mean, there's just a zillion of these instances. And that's why for me, obviously we started a business around this, but I'm so bullish on information delivery and the importance of it in an open, transparent world, because it's an age-old problem that companies, to your point around normalization, like dirty data, disparate data, big problem. I think a lot less talked about problem is we have a lot of data and people aren't using it as consistently and effectively as they could be.
Yeah, Scott, you're 100% accurate, and it's not a new problem. Probably dating myself here, but 10 years ago, I led a panel for a big data conference, and it was all about big data. And one of the things that I talked about was big data is great, but actually small data is better. We all have too much data. There's data everywhere. How do we take that data and create insights? And I think about insights as the small data components of this massive lake of information. How do we take that and create just-in-time moments with that data to help improve the process? So yes, dirty data. Yes, tons of data. But data is only good if it's turned into actionable insight.
The insight that I think a lot of people miss is executives, leaders, they don't want reports. Like, I don't want, when I say, run this report or XYZ, what I want is I want you to tell me the signal from the noise. I want you to tell me the insight that drives the action and the behavior. And I think that's a big opportunity for companies. It's also a big opportunity for young people in their career to realize that no busy senior leader wants to go through a big report or a spreadsheet or whatever. Just tell me the story. I can't help but think about like the financial statements. It's important to look at, but what I really want is I want the finance person to be like, what do I need to know here? And being able to kind of synthesize and communicate that either through doing the analysis yourself or leveraging technology to do the analysis, I think is what we all want.
And honestly, Scott, what's funny about what you're saying right now is that that's no different than, many of the things that you do in life, right? Like, let's say you have to have a tough conversation, right? Everything revolves around the way that you actually deliver that information, the way that you curate it, and the way that you think about how is this person going to consume this information and how are they going to react. So I totally agree. I think that's super exciting, and especially in a world where asynchronous work, distributed work is so big, right? Communication and transparency, it just can't be replaced. It's the only way that you can allow and trust the people that work in your organization are going to be doing the right thing at the right time to deliver those customer outcomes. But one thing that I did want to circle back on, Howard, is that idea of requesting coaching in real time. I think that's so powerful, more specifically because you're encouraging vulnerability and you're making a culture of raising your hand. And we've had so many people on this podcast talk about the fact that their ability to really say, hey, I don't know, really say, hey, I need help, accelerated their career dramatically. So I think that's super powerful.
I'm surprised every day, and I try and stay naive and open to all kinds of learning. One of the things that really surprised me recently was we have a product called Yoda AI that's all about providing those insights in the moment to reps or managers. What should I be focused on? What should I be saying? What should I be doing? And we started with the tool really focusing on taking the insights that managers had and the coaching that they were giving to their reps and setting up these notifications in the tool to allow the rep to get that insight, like in the moment, like here, you forgot to say this, you forgot to ask for a meeting at the 5-minute mark. And if you don't do it, your opportunity likelihood of growing is, will decrease by 29% or whatever. What we realized was the tool was as powerful for the manager to set up these notifications for the reps as it was for reps to set up their own notifications. People want to grow and learn, and you give them the tools. We've seen our reps set up their own notifications all over the place because they realize where they have weaknesses and things they're missing. So it's not just top-down learning and coaching. It's really, I have notepads all over the place. Those are things I want to do and ways I want to grow. If I can build that in the technology and it can let me know at the right moment that I need to focus on that, that's perfection.
You're touching another theme that I think is so important and just fundamental to, I think, how software is changing is really just allowing people to autonomously enable themselves. And so I think old world, just thinking about data or anything, there is a team of analysts or whatever, and they're kind of the guardians of being able to get an insight or look at a data or whatever. Sales ops is a great example. We have companies that's like, oh, I want an email alert about something in my pipeline. Cool. Submit a queue, submit something into a work queue. And maybe 2 months later, I get an email alert set up that's like literally not even relevant anymore. And I think just broadly, what the best companies are doing is they're thinking about their companies and they're thinking about the technologies they use as ones where people can help themselves. People can self-enable, because I think that is the experience that a lot of people want. I was really proud of this. We recently had a company on board that has over 1,000 people using Troops, and over 300 of them have set up their own use cases.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is crazy because, to your point, it's typically a lot of these technologies are top-down, centrally managed, and that can often be a good starting point, but I don't think it's the way of the future. I really, really don't. And so I think for people that are building software or even thinking or buying software, I think, that to me, the citizen developer, the democratization of being able to help yourself and get what you need when you need it is so important. And it's going to be a characteristic of the companies that win.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, it all goes back to the people and developing the people and giving them the tools to excel at whatever their skill or craft is. And, it's so interesting to look out at the ecosystem today and you see messaging like personalization at scale or, clone your top producers. Well, but there are people that these are their careers and their passion and they want to grow. And I don't want to work for a company where all I do is hit a button and it shoots off 1,000 things that are the same for everybody. That doesn't make sense for me and it's not going to feel good. And ultimately I'm going to churn and go to a different company. How do we create loyal fans, loyal customers? How do we create loyal employees? Because they feel like we're investing in their growth and we're helping them to not just get to the next level of their profession, but get to the next level of their life because they spend so much time and energy with us. How about coaching them? How about creating a better person? How about listening to them and what motivates them? If we focus on that, they'll perform better. And that's critical.
Yeah. The CEO of Terminus, we were talking about just kind of like retention and growth and all these things. He's like, you can't measure this on a spreadsheet, but what I want to know is who out of amongst our customers got promotions because they bought us. That's how I know, like if we're helping people get promoted, and improve their careers because we're giving them, superpowers that they might not have been able to have before. That's when I know we're having a big impact and we're being successful.
Yeah, that's great. I remember back in the day, you'd hear something like, you never got fired for buying IBM, right?
Oh, yeah.
And buying decisions were based on job security, right? You're going to buy a tool that's not going to screw up the business. That just flipped the entire thing on its head. And it's really creating tools that make people successful and grow. I love that.
Yeah. This idea of like empowering your people with tools. I'm thinking back to another conversation as well. It was the CRO of Atlassian, Cameron Deesh, and he was speaking with us. And one of the things he was talking about was Atlassian's, development and all the things that they did to make it easier for customers to buy, right? So at first it was on-prem, then he moved to the cloud and you could buy it on their website. Then they had a credit card requirement, they removed it. And then they had a long form, they removed it. And then it was just one question and you could sign up, right? And each time they increased their customer base by like 3 to 5x, right? So, but that principle is no different to this because ultimately you have two bodies of groups that you're really trying to empower, your customers and your own employees. If you can ignite your employees and ultimately think about every single barrier, right? What is the credit card requirement that you can take out today that will allow your employees to move that much faster? But that said, let's move into the lightning round, Howard. This is going to get a little bit more personal.
Here we go.
To start out here, what is a life question that you are actively searching for an answer to?
It is, what is the life question that is most important that I should be focused on?
Howard, what is your 10X project right now and why are you so excited about it?
Yeah, my 10X project is our product Yoda AI, and it's taking all the data from all of our other tools and centralizing that and creating that just-in-time notification and a workflow engine for our reps. It's taking data, artificial intelligence, it's taking individual guidance, and providing that to reps so that they can grow. And I'm so excited at the results we're seeing, and I'm so passionate about all of this coming together.
I got to say, to just kind of pay back the business is human compliment on the name, Yoda AI is a really awesome name. And just the fun that you guys can have from a marketing perspective with that is phenomenal.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
So Howard, what is one skill you'd like to make sure to pass on to your children?
The ability to always prioritize learning, growing, and education.
Amen. Last one here. Personally, Howard, what has been the biggest inflection point in your life?
I think the biggest inflection point was when I actually took my exam to become a licensed therapist, and I failed. And I was so disappointed because I had worked so hard, and it was the first time I really just flat out failed. And rather than beating myself up, I picked myself up quickly. I got right back in it, and I passed the test. And at that moment in time, I realized life is just about learning. It's about making mistakes. It's about growing from those mistakes, and that perseverance really is an important characteristic of everything we do. And you have to fail, you have to grow, and you have to learn. But it's our attitude about those failures and those learning experiences that really defines us.
Yeah, I read this somewhere today. I don't know where, but it was such a great quote. It's really difficult to beat someone that just won't quit.
Yeah, I'll tell you here's a psychology piece. I've worked with children that have been battered or abused. What I realized in working with that population is that they were typically battered or abused because the parent felt like they had done something wrong and that beating was going to teach them a lesson. Here's the lesson they learned. They didn't learn that they had done something wrong. All they remembered was the beating. So if we beat ourselves up, all we're going to remember is the beating. So it's a life lesson, right? Rather than beating ourselves up for what we may not have done correctly, turn that around. Stop the beating. Stop that process, because that's how we grow and learn. Celebrate the mistakes we make. Same thing you teach a kid that's been abused. You're going to make mistakes, and it's okay. Just don't continue that beating process.
I think that's an amazing message, and I so agree. And I'm just boy, man, I'm ready to just go take on the world right now. Like bring it on. So Howard, it was a real joy to have you on the show. We're so grateful. A lot of really thought-provoking things. How can I want to check this Yoda AI thing out. How do I keep tabs on this?
Just go to ringdna.com and we got a little tab for Yoda. And I'm on LinkedIn. I'm trying to do my best to preach the good word, and I'm so grateful for you guys. I love the podcast. I'm excited about Troops. Thanks for keeping it real. Business really is human. So good work, guys.
Well, thank you. And
thank you.
All the listeners out there, we're grateful for you. We'll see you guys on the next show, and we really look forward to it.